Morning. Mr. Van Hollen and I just participated on the floor of the House and sought to seek recognition so that we could ask unanimous consent to place on the floor and to pass legislation which would give certainty and assurance to seniors, to the unemployed, and to 160 million Americans who are at risk of losing their tax cut on January 1st, the ability to have that certainty, to have that confidence, not just at this holiday period, but in January and February, while we take action to try to come to an agreement on the one-year extension that we want. Unfortunately, as has happened so often, the acting Speaker, Republican presiding officer, walked out. He walked out, would not render recognition, and would not allow Mr. Van Hollen and I to make that unanimous consent request and move forward. This is unfortunate. And the Speaker has indicated that he's ready to go to conference. The irony is that he appointed 5 conferees, all of whom at one point or another have said that they are opposed to a one-year extension of the middle-class tax cut, and in fact have made comments similar to the Speaker's that the middle-class tax cut is a gimmick. Well, the middle class doesn't believe that. The working men and women of this country don't believe that. They don't believe it's a gimmick to reject having the wealthiest America pay some additional small increment so that this bill could have passed in the Senate months ago. I regret that the Republicans who say they're here to work, we were on the floor to do our work, and they walked out. I now want to yield to Mr. Van Hollen, who is the ranking member of the Budget Committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hoyer. And as I think all of you saw, the presiding officer brought the House of Representatives, the People's House, into session and immediately gavelled it to a close before giving us an opportunity to ask for unanimous consent to take up a bill which is identical to the Senate bipartisan compromise bill to extend the payroll tax cut. The Speaker of the House and the Republican leadership were AWOL on the floor of the House today. I didn't see any of them. The Speaker of the House can, as we speak, he can walk down this hall into the chamber, open the chamber. We can enter into a unanimous consent agreement to take up the Republican compromise bill, the identical House version. It's right here. And if we can vote on this today, we would get the same bipartisan result that they received in the Senate the other day. And by the end of today, we could have a bill on the President's desk that would make sure that 160 million Americans received a tax cut, continuation of the tax cut beginning January 1st. We could make sure that millions of Americans who are out there looking for a job but can't find one have unemployment insurance, and we can make sure that millions of Americans will still be assured that their doctors will be paid. These are Medicare patients, that they will make sure that their doctors will be available because they will be receiving under the Medicare system, full payment. So it's a real tragedy that the House Republican leadership did not show up today on the floor of the House of Representatives, because had they been there, they could have entered into this unanimous consent agreement that Mr. Hoyer mentioned. We could have gotten this bill passed, and by the end of the day, it could be on the President's desk. So they may be somewhere in the Capitol, but they're not on the floor of the House of Representatives, which is where the People's House transacts its business. So we'll be here every day waiting for them to come to the floor of the House to actually take up this legislation so we can get it done.
Mr. Hoyer, Mr. Hoyer.
Why aren't you guys on the floor launching some sort of protest? That's what Republicans did in August of 08. They were here every single day talking on the floor to a largely empty chamber, but they were there. So why aren't your Democrats here doing the same thing?
Your premise that our Democrats wouldn't be here if there is business to do is wrong. The fact of the matter, we were there to ask that the House take up a unanimous consent request. They walked out on us. They were not on the floor, and the acting speaker, who was on the floor, walked out. But more importantly than that, they walked out yesterday when we were all here. They walked out on 89 senators, 39 Republicans, Senator Brown, Senator McCain, the Wall Street Journal have all said, Senator Snowe, Senator Lugar, one of the senior Republican members, have all said, pass this bill and do what we do all the time, what families do all the time. When you can't get an agreement on something you know you need to get an agreement on, but you want to continue in place the existing situation, you make a short-term agreement. Say, well, we'll do this for a little while, but let's decide what we're going to do in the long term. That is what the Senate did because they couldn't reach agreement. The House knows, the House Republican leadership knows they couldn't get agreement. So they walked out yesterday with all of us here ready to do our work without giving us the opportunity to vote on the Senate product that had overwhelming bipartisan support.
Mr. Hoyer, we've had these situations where we've had pro forma sessions before, and whether it's Democrats in charge or Republicans in charge, at varying times people got up and tried to make motions and tried to do things. I've been here a long time, and I've never seen anybody ever get recognized during one of these. Did you guys genuinely think that they would recognize you? And how can you say in this case you thought that you
Chad, I can't remember a time, maybe you can, I've been here a long time myself, I can't remember a time when 160 million Americans were adversely affected by the actions that we took yesterday, where 160 million Americans are uncertain as to whether or not their tax cut is going to continue on January 1st, where 48 million seniors were going to be lacking confidence that their doctors will be available to them because they're not going to be compensated properly, as everybody agrees they should be, and that 3 million Americans are concerned about losing their unemployment insurance and how they're going to support themselves and their family. I can't remember a similar situation. Very frankly, what has happened is the Republicans have taken hostage those 160 million people. They've taken hostage those 48 million people, and they've taken hostage those 3 million people so that it would be done their way or the highway.
But you really didn't think you would get recognized?
Well, I was,
heart of hearts, based on history.
in my heart of hearts, Chad, and my experience in the past, and my understanding that you've heard me read the list of how many times they've walked away. The answer to your question is, I was not surprised that they walked away from resolving this issue on behalf of the American people.
Mr. Hoyer, I have a question. It's the end of the year and we're back in crisis mode.
Yes.
Now, you've said that this has been a Congress that's lurched from crisis to crisis.
Yes.
Boehner explained it last week as this is what you get when you have divided government. Do you think that's the case, or is something else?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. One of the most difficult votes any of us have cast was when President Bush was president, and we had a deeply falling economy and a financial crisis. And President Bush came to the Democratic leadership of the House and the Senate, said we have a crisis, and we're going to go into a deep depression if you don't act. 2/3 of President Bush's party, just as they did yesterday, walked out on America. Democrats stood with President Bush because we thought the country was in crisis. And we acted, and as a result of that action, in my opinion, we avoided a depression. Unfortunately, we still had a deep recession, which we're still suffering from. We're still pulling ourselves out of that. But the fact of the matter is that we have been there time and time again to act in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that this government and this country remain stable and successful.
The other point here, though, is they weren't divided in the Senate. They weren't divided. You had 80% of the Republican senators support this payroll tax cut. So the real question is, why is it that the House Republicans are so divided from the Senate Republicans and the Senate Democrats and House Democrats and the President of the United States in terms of getting something done? That's the question facing the House of Representatives. And I think the answer is pretty clear from the last couple days, which is you have an extreme right-wing element in the House of Representatives that has hijacked the process. And that is why they refuse to even bring up the bipartisan Senate bill for an up or down vote, because they were afraid they would get the same bipartisan result in the House as they got in the Senate. They are afraid of bipartisanship. And the reason is because they have this very right-wing element. Let's also remember that the House Republican leadership was opposed to a payroll tax cut. 2 month, 3 month, 6 month, 1 year. Their record is full of statements where they were opposed to it. Their action the other day, by refusing to take up the Senate compromise bill and sending this bill off to die, was in fact intended to accomplish what they had wanted to accomplish from the beginning, which was to have no payroll tax cut. Now, the reason Mr. Hoyer and I went to the floor today is to give them another opportunity to do that. It is absolutely the case that the Speaker of the House and the Republican leadership could have come down to the floor today. They could have entered into a unanimous consent agreement to take up this bill, which is identical to the Senate compromise bill, and we could have gotten this done today. And the American people could go to sleep tonight knowing that come January 1st, they would have a payroll tax cut. Unemployed Americans looking for jobs would know they could still put food on the table, and doctors could be assured that they would continue to be paid for the Medicare patients they see. That was all of it.
Jill, let me just add to what Mr. Van Hollen said.
Why not send in conferees?
Let me say that.
Because there's a bipartisan agreement. The bipartisan agreement that was voted on overwhelmingly by Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. In fact, it was the Republican leadership in the Senate. Let's remember, the Republican leadership in the Senate blocked a vote on the House Republican bill in the Senate.
Let me add, if I can, Jill, to your question, and then I want to say something about the conferees. Not only is there an agreement by the overwhelming majority of the United States Senate, the American public overwhelmingly agrees. Poll after poll shows that they think we ought to get this done. So it's not simply that the Tea Party-controlled conference over here disagrees with the United States Senate. They are not representing the views of the American people. Now, let me say something to the conferees. I pointed out to you, the conferees that have been appointed by Speaker Boehner have, as Mr. Van Hollen pointed out, have all opposed at one point in time or another the extension of the tax cut. This is a device, a gimmick, a political charade, if you will, to pretend support for something that they have historically, over the last year, opposed.
Mr. Van Hollen. One more question. Following up on Chad from a while ago, you were saying Democrats have said they want the politics to end here and get to business. Republicans have said the same. With all respect, this is the second partisan dog and pony show that we've all attended in the last hour. So if you want the partisan gimmicks to end, why is it that you're still pulling partisan gimmicks and making this still partisan dog and pony show? With all respect.
With all respect, I think your premise is dog and pony show. This is democracy. We are saying that we believe, very importantly, we ought to pass what the Senate, no dog and pony show, overwhelming bipartisan support, sent to this House. No, let me answer the question.
You suspected that you weren't going to get recognized, and also House Republicans having a sort of pseudo-conference committee when they know that there's not going to be a conference committee. All of this seems like game playing at a time when both sides are calling for the games to end. Why is that?
We're not playing a game. We're prepared to have this bill come back and pass it and send it to the president, and we can do it today. That's not a game. None of the 160 million people are going to lose their tax cut think it's a game. None of the 48 million Americans who are concerned about continuing access to their doctors think it's a game. None of the folks on unemployment who are relying on that unemployment to feed themselves and to help support their families think this is a game. This is not a game. Why are you all here? Why are we able now to communicate to the American public? Why have you all Because we went to the floor. We went to the floor to speak to the American people and to the members of the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, the Speaker walked off, not Speaker Boehner. Speaker Pro Tem, walked off the floor. They shut off the cameras. They wanted to shut us down. We're here on very serious business. No game. That's what Senator McCain was talking about. That's what Senator Brown is talking about. That's what Senator Olympia Snowe is talking about. That's what Senator Lugar is talking about. They're talking about get this work done. And unfortunately, I can name you 12 instances that I have on a list here. I won't bother to do that, where the Republicans have walked away from solving serious problems. This is not a game. This is serious.
Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.